Okay, so gastro-oesophageal reflux disease and stomach ulcers are signals of distress from our digestive system. To manage this, we usually pop or take acid-blocking pills. However, such quick remedies will not stop trouble brewing in our digestive system. Are drugs the only answers? Well, let us hear from Ms Swanee Teh how botanical research has uncovered a clinically proven alternative. Ms Swanee is a pharmacist by profession, graduated with first-class honors from the Welsh School of Pharmacy in Cardiff University. She was hospital pharmacist at the Royal Gwent Hospital in Newport, Wales, and later at Caerphilly's Miners District Hospital. Ms Swanee is a firm believer in adopting a holistic approach in managing the many ailments we face today. As a medical professional, she delivers lectures regularly to healthcare providers across the country. She has dealt with natural therapies for more than 10 years, and she is also a professionally trained coach to inspire people to maximize their personal and professional potential. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's give a round of applause to Ms Swanee Teh.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. Now, I'd like to start with something very simple. Can anybody tell me what's the picture on your left? Fried chicken? Very close, very close. My 9-year-old calls this a chicken tornado. And what do you think is the answer to this? 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. Yes? 40? Could be. I'd offer that this is dan-dan-dan-dan, Beethoven's Symphony No. 5, the Victory Symphony. I'd like to tell you a story of this young girl who had 2 apples in her hands. And when her mother asked for one of the apples, the girl quickly took a bite from each of the apples. Immediately, the mother said, "Oh no, my girl is so selfish. She cannot share. Why is she so greedy? Why is she taking a bite from each of the apples? I'm a bad mother. She must have gotten this from her father." I heard her definitely there. "This is the sweeter apple for you, Mommy," she said. That was her point of view. Judgment, I'd like to offer this to you, ladies and gentlemen, is not a truth. It's just someone's opinion or point of view. Listen to this quote from Marcus Aurelius, one of the 5 good emperors from the Roman Empire. "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not a truth." Now, throughout history, this is also true in the art of healing. Throughout history, the art of healing has been influenced by religion, by philosophies, by politics, by vested interests. And the conflicts between alternative medicine and Western medicines is nothing new. In 1847, the American Medical Association was set up from an interest in herbal medicines. But soon, this association was quickly underwritten by pharmaceutical companies who had much to gain. And so the use of chemically synthesized actives became mainstream medicine very soon. By the 20th century, Western medicine had been established as the way to go. And alternative medicines, herbal medicines, plant medicines were seen as inferior and had lost its stand in medical treatment. Now, you may ask me, what am I, a product of Western medicine, doing standing in front of you, about to tell you about a plant medicine? Well, there was a time that I thought I knew. As a pharmacist, I took great passion to learn everything that I can about Western medicine. and I used it to my advantage. If I wanted to use it to prevent a hangover, I know which medicine to use. If I wanted to recover from a hangover, I also knew which medicine to use. If I wanted to stop my period so I can go on holiday, I knew which medicine to use. Right. So that was the time that I thought I knew. Please take a look at this quote over here by Confucius. It sounds a bit crude, on finding another way to adopt another view. As humans, we are by nature creatures of habit. We would resist change. We will hold on to those things that we really, really know and not have another point of view unless something threatens our beings. So that was how I was. People change for two main reasons. Either their minds have been opened or their hearts have been broken. I'd like to say and tell you that I actually received a picture of illumination. And one day, I actually knew my mind was open. But that didn't happen to me. It was when my heart was broken so many times that I decided there must be another way. And this happened when I first had my baby. As a pharmacist, I thought that I had all the Western medicine knowledge within my hands. I would be a good mother. I would be able to solve all of my baby's problems. But when my baby got sick, month after month after month, I made sure I took her to the hospital. We saw good pediatricians, and they prescribed medicines that I know. But month after month after month, this continued. She wasn't stronger by these Western medicines. And that was when I thought there must be another way. 3 years ago, I was caring for a person with cancer, and it was pancreatic cancer. Those type of cancer where doctors wash their hands off. 3 to 6 months to live. And at this time, now my brother-in-law, the person that I was caring for is actually my mother-in-law. And my brother-in-law is actually one of the top doctors in the Singapore Heart Center. Luckily, he allowed me to have a say in the mother's treatment. So my mother-in-law actually lasted 1.5 years with good quality of life for somebody with pancreatic cancer. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to offer to you today that there could be another way. That if you change the way you look at things and change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. Plant medicines are not inferior to Western medicines, and I'm very honored to be working with Kordel today, who is a progressive brand, to be bringing to you in Singapore a plant medicine that has been around for many, many years. It has a history of 80 years, and I'd like to be able to share knowledge with you, experience with you, how my heart was broken before, and how now I do use both Western and alternative medicines for better outcomes, for Malaysians as well as Singaporeans. Is this the truth, ladies and gentlemen? This is a mathematical equation, so you say, yes, it cannot be anything else. 7 plus 2 is 9. But you know what? So are these. So I'd like to start my presentation this morning by introducing you to the digestive tract. Now, our stomach is a source of our pleasure, but also a lot of source of distress when something goes wrong. Food takes about 3 to 4 days to travel from our mouth until it comes out in the feces. And within the stomach is a very special organ which can withstand a very strong acid. Within our stomach is an acid that is more likened to battery acid in your cars. And it's so strong that it can actually eat through metal. But we're not hurt by this acid because the layers of our stomach renews itself every few days. The stomach churns food and digests it before introducing it to the intestines. So as I mentioned before, the acid does not melt through the stomach because of this mucus layer here, which is a very important part of our stomach. Because it produces an alkaline solution to neutralize the acid. Just some quick tips, facts about the tummy. It takes about 6 hours to digest a high-fat meal, and the stomach produces about 2.5 liters of acid a day, the pH of which has to be maintained around 1.5 to 3.5 for food digestion to optimally happen. So what happens when things aren't right? We feel it very, very soon. Gas, heartburn, bloating, gastritis. Just to introduce you to some definitions, gastritis refers to the inflammation or irritation of the stomach lining. Right? Very simple. Now GERD, lots of people know this acronym by now, gastro-oesophageal reflux disease. Now GERD is a situation of a chronic condition which causes the acid in the stomach to backflow from the stomach into the esophagus. Now the esophagus is the tract between our mouth and our stomach. And the cells within the esophagus are very gentle. They are not heavy duty built like the stomach. So anything which is introduced into the esophagus is going to cause us pain, inflammation. Now GERD is actually a very prevalent condition, more so nowadays. In developed countries, it's up to 48%. So how do you know whether what you're having is a simple acid reflux problem or a heartburn problem, or is it something more sinister? Well, if the GERD is happening 2 or more times a week, you've got nighttime symptoms, it's been now 5 years, it comes on and off, but it's been now 5 years since you've been having this condition, you've got difficulty swallowing, or there's pain upon swallowing, and when your condition disrupts your daily activities, that is worsening GERD. Now GERD can happen when there's reflux of acid out from the stomach into the esophagus. But sometimes this acid rises up into the throat, which we then term this LRPD, as reflux into the throat. And this is when you get a burning sensation in the mouth. You could be tasting something sour or salty, and you may have a constant need to clear your throat, or coughing, a dry cough that never goes away. Bad breath, because the acid has destroyed some of the cells in your mouth and causing bacteria, bad bacteria to breed, or hoarseness. Your voice has changed because the acid has also damaged the voice box. Now I'd like to point out that GERD and asthma has got a very strong connection. GERD occurs in at least 75% of patients with asthma. Now the reasons for this aren't very clear, but scientists believe that it's when the acid actually escapes from the stomach, the lung bronchioles constrict to prevent the acid from going into the lungs. There's a vagal nervous system that protects your lungs, and in turn, asthma develops. Why is this important, this connection? Well, it means that if we can actually successfully manage GERD, we can also successfully manage asthma. Asthma is an extremely difficult condition to manage, an extremely expensive condition to manage. So asthma and acid reflux often occur together, as mentioned, and these affect also children. About half of children with asthma also has GERD. Another definition, gastric ulcer. Anyone here often have ulcers in the mouth? Yeah? Well, if you've experienced how painful it is for having an ulcer in the mouth, imagine having an ulcer in the stomach and then pouring acid over it. A very, very painful condition. Gastric cancer happens when the cells in the stomach goes out of control and it then develops into a tumor. Gastric cancer is indeed a very big killer. These are 2008 studies from the International Agency for Research on Cancer. But if you look carefully here, although lung cancer rates as the number 1 cancer killer, the stomach, the liver, and the colorectal regions are all part of your digestive tract, all part of the gastrointestinal system. So the gastrointestinal cancers are the number 1 cancer killer of today. I'd like to introduce you to a bacteria called H. pylori. Bacteria are very clever living organisms, and this one in particular has existed for many, many centuries. What it does is, infection results in acute and chronic gastritis, and Helicobacter pylori, it's called Helicobacter because its head is like a helicopter, and it actually burrows into the stomach lining, and that's why it's so difficult to kill, because it embeds itself into the stomach. It's a very clever bacteria because in the stomach, you get fed 3 full meals a day, guaranteed. Okay? So H. pylori, worldwide, they reckon that about 50% of the world population are infected by this bacteria. And infection with H. pylori increases gastric cancer by 6 times. 1 in 20 stomach ulcers are cancerous. So before the discovery of H. pylori back in 1982, people thought that stress was what caused ulcers to happen, or the different foods, spicy foods. But this bacteria is the #1 carcinogenic causing agent of stomach cancer. Worldwide, you will see that different countries have got different rates of H. pylori infections. And it's going down in developing countries. In Singapore, the prevalence is about 31.4%. And unfortunately, this is a bit of a racist of a bacteria. Infection rates are higher in the Indian and Chinese population as compared to the Malay ethnic group. And H. pylori in existence, together with having to take painkillers, actually increases bleeding in gastric ulcers. Singaporeans are concerned about H. pylori, as can be seen from this article here in the New Straits Times. They are worried about this infection. It's not easy to kill, and bouts of antibiotics later, it's still there. The Malaysian data is very similar to the Singaporean data. Also a higher prevalence in the Chinese population. They reckon that the reasons for this could be lifestyle, could be a genetic predisposition, it's the way perhaps we share our food, lo sang, all of us have our chopsticks and we all share a meal together. But it's not a one-time exposure to somebody with H. pylori that you are infected. It needs actually a long, close proximity living with the person. Now, this is what H. pylori does to the stomach lining. If you look at the slide over here on your left, you will see that it's starting to have a bit of inflammation, but as time progresses, it gets progressively worse. H. pylori spreads through the oral-fecal route, through saliva, contaminated food, water, linen, toys. And it's not only racist, it's also sexist, because it prefers to infect mothers. Somehow, through evolution, this bacteria has found that if it infects the mothers, who are usually the primary carer of the household, they will successfully infect the others as well. It infects couples and families. If one spouse is positive for H. pylori, 70% of chances are the other spouse is. But if one spouse is negative, the chances are only 9% of the other being positive. It's a childhood infection. If you are infected now, don't blame your colleague or your wife. You've probably been infected since age 10. And they have found in developing countries, as many as 90% of the population remain infected at the age of 40 years old, unless you do something about it. This is a picture of the bacteria and how it embeds itself into the mucus layer. The mucus layer is very important in our stomach because it actually protects us from the acid. But this bacteria gets into this mucus layer and disrupts the layer. Symptoms of H. pylori happens in only 1 in every 5 patients. Okay, these, I suppose, are the lucky ones, but they will, of course, display various kinds of uncomfortable symptoms such as pain, bloating, lack of appetite, dark-colored stools. The remaining 80% who are infected actually have no symptoms. So you actually won't know until you actually go and do a test. So why should we treat H. pylori? Well, first thing is the risk of cancer. Infection with this bacteria highly increases the rate of gastric cancer happening, because this is what it does to the normal stomach lining, turning it into an inflamed state after which it develops into ulcers, after which it develops into cancer. So that was H. pylori. Why should we treat it? Why should we treat GERD? Symptoms are very uncomfortable for GERD. It can lead to lung damage, ulcers, and also a condition called Barrett's esophagus, whereby you can notice that the lower part of the sphincter here, the esophagus, is extremely corroded by the acid. What are factors worsening chronic gastritis or GERD? These are the whole list: H. pylori, medication, our lifestyle, smoking, excessive alcohol. All of these increases inflammation and reduces the stomach mucus renewal. Remember that the stomach mucus is very important, right? And stress. I'd like to just talk about stress a little bit more. Understanding that 60% of Singaporeans, according to a survey by Job Central, complain that they have very heavy workload and work stress. In the New Straits Times, it says that more young professionals suffer from burnout nowadays, and about 90% of psychiatric patients suffer from mental health issues. I was on the way here to the venue today. I was just talking to the taxi driver, and when I told him what my presentation was all about, he says, simple only, no problem. Take care of your stress, take care of your food. So he related how his wife, who is a career woman, always wants to do the best by the family, and but was actually diagnosed with ulcers in the stomach because of her work and her stress. And I think that this is a very true reflection of how our lifestyle has taken us these days. So I'd like to show you how stress worsens GERD. Stress is like being chased by a tiger. And within the body, what happens is that when our brain realizes that we're in a stressful situation, it will actually produce a hormone called cortisol. And this hormone will actually squeeze all the blood from our stomach. Now, if you look at me right now, do you know which part of me contains all my organs? It's this part over here. And which part of me will actually protect myself? My hands and my leg, right? So when you're in a stressful situation, what happens is that your body squeezes all the blood away from your digestive system into your arms and your limbs, so that you can choose either to fight or to flight. Exactly the same if you are faced with by a tiger chasing you. So this is the normal mechanism of stress. Stress not only draws blood away from the digestive tract, it also draws blood away from the forebrain to the hindbrain. So when you're in a stressful situation, you actually become less intelligent. Intelligent not so important now. Right? Digestion, not so important. Right now, we just have to survive. We have to survive first. This is stress. Okay? This is how our body perceives stress. So when stress takes over, other non-important body functions shuts down. Today, we haven't got any more tigers except those that are in the zoo, but we have got stress in many, many different forms. And you know what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. People stress, heartbreak stress, money problems. These are all forms of stress. And even though the tiger is not there anymore, we still feel as though we are being chased by a tiger. And our body are responding exactly like how we are facing when we are faced with a tiger. Boss, tiger, same. By the way, I have a very nice boss who's seated by there. So this is what happens during stress. Your whole digestion system is altered. That concentration is no longer within digestion. Concentration is no longer within the immune system. Because all you have to do is to feel your limbs, to fight or to run, fight or flight. And it changes the whole biochemistry of your body. What are we doing about this? Pharmaceutical terms, we have got all these kinds of medications to help us. Just like to tell you that from antacids, these are probably the mildest form of medications, right up to the proton pump inhibitors, which are a very, very strong acid-blocking medications. PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, are one of the best-selling drugs ever. Sales of 26.5 billion in 2008. And I'm sure a lot of you do not realize this, but acid-blocking drugs are not meant to be taken on the long term. They should be taken longest for 4 to 6 weeks, after which you should be discussing with your doctor how it should be tailored down. I was just at the pharmacy 2 days ago in Malaysia, and there was a customer there who was buying stacks and stacks of gastric medication, omeprazole, Nexium, Perrier. So she said, oh, I do this once a year. I said, oh, are you a doctor? She said, no. Are you from Singapore? She said, yes. Long-term use, lifetime use is often very common. How do these drugs work? Basically, there are billions of cells in our stomach that are producing acid every day. This drug actually sits on these parietal cells and stops it from producing the acid that we require. Now, many of us think that stomach acid is something dangerous, something undesirable. But stomach acid is in fact very important for us for a number of reasons. It sterilizes food. If there's any germs in your food, it sterilizes the food. It is important for protein digestion, all the meats that you are eating. It activates protein enzymes, it stimulates enzyme delivery, it absorbs vitamins like B12, and it is also responsible for closing the sphincter on the top of the stomach and opening the sphincter at the bottom. If your stomach acid is a problem, right, if it's not right, the pH is not right, food will escape from the stomach, and food cannot flow down. This is the function of stomach acid. Now just look at some of the common symptoms of what it's like not to have an optimal level of acid in your stomach. Gas, acid reflux, bloating and cramping, bad breath, bad body odor, undigested food. You don't really want to eat meat. Tired after meals. You're feeling full, but you're still hungry. Because you're full because the food is still in your stomach, cannot go down. But you're hungry because the food is not turned into nutrients and energy for you to absorb. Chronic anemia, weak fingernails. Just check your fingernails and see. If your fingernails feel soft or there are white spots on it, it could mean that you are actually deficient of some nutrient which you are not absorbing well. Frequent nausea. These are some of the long-term effects of acid-blocking medications. High risk of infections. Our stomach acid is responsible for killing the germs. But when we suppress all this acid, what's going to kill the germs? Nothing. It's up to you. Weaker bones, because acid is required for bone metabolism. Higher risk of stomach cancer. This is very funny. Because you're actually taking acid-blocking medications to prevent the ulcers from worsening, to prevent stomach cancer. But when you take proton pump inhibitors, you feel so good. So you don't feel the symptoms at all, even though the cells are replicating out of order. So you carry on as though nothing's happening. And that's how you actually increase the risk of stomach cancer. That's addiction. There's a high dependence. Even if somebody was to take an acid-blocking pill for 1 week, they cannot stop. Because once they stop, all their symptoms will come back. Imagine suppressing all the cells in your stomach from producing acid. When you remove the drug, what's going to happen? They're going to come back with a vengeance. Your stomach's going to go into hyperacidity mode. Very difficult to stop this drug. Heart arrhythmias, because different kinds of minerals are required for the heart to function. Kidney failure and allergies. The risk of proton pump inhibitors are well studied, as outlined by this medical journal here. These findings consistent across all types of studies, and for longer use, more than 1 year, any use, both usual doses and high doses. For those of you who think that I'm just on a low dose of the acid blockers, it's okay. The fact is, it's not okay. For most patients, the adverse risk of proton pump inhibitors outweigh the benefits. Reducing unnecessary use will require action by both physicians and the patient. So knowledge is very important, and that is what I'd like to share with you this morning. Take charge of how you're being treated. Open up your heart to the different possibilities in treatment. Are they the $1 billion solution, these super drugs, when people take proton pump inhibitors, they haven't cured their problem of reflux. They are only controlling the symptoms. I'd like to introduce you to a pine therapy, an alternative way of looking at things. Now, this product is actually sourced from pine needles. There are different parts of the pine trees from which we can actually derive active ingredients. This particular one in Pine A refers to the pine needles. So it's the green part of the tree, which is where photosynthesis is happening. Pine trees are arguably one of the world's oldest living tree. And very fascinating was the fact that pine needles were used by Japanese monks seeking to achieve immortality or self-mummification, that they will never die. So what they will do is, they will gather all the pine needles, they will go up to a mountain somewhere, they won't eat, they'll meditate, and just take pine needles and mummify themselves. So how did people actually discover pine needles? Let's extract something from here. It started in the 1930s with Russian biochemists who observed that during the winter, everything was covered in snow. Everything had died, except the pine trees, which were green, which were alive, which were healthy. So they were thinking that there's probably something in the pine tree that is causing this tree to be so healthy. And that is how they extracted the live elements. This product here is alive, ladies and gentlemen, because they are live phytochemicals that has been retained to be able to work in our bodies. Pine A contains bioeffective A, which is the first and original extract of conifer green needles. It has been studied for over 80 years, and there is ongoing research in the Pasteur Institute covering many areas of medical research, cancer, heart health, immunology, toxicology, and so on. This is a very important part of the lecture because it's a part that the doctors, not all doctors can understand. This is not a single molecule. It is a complex made up of 800 different kinds of molecules, which comprises chlorophyll, carotenoids, various kinds of active ingredients which are not made by men. It's made by the trees. Are there any pharmacists in the audience this morning, this afternoon? Yeah? No? Well, if there were, they would be looking at the different kinds of ingredients and say, hey, I can make that. I can just, put all these things together and they will come together. But no, you cannot actually change a natural complex and expect it to perform the same way. So when they found what was in bioeffective A, in Pine A, they found that it's very similar to compounds in our blood. And therefore, it's very safe to consume, very readily absorbed, very readily utilized. Now in Malaysia, people like to DIY. So when I tell them this is from a pine tree, they say, oh, can I buy a pine tree from IKEA and then I boil the pine needles and then I drink? Right? It's not that simple. Because the material inside these pine needles are very, very delicate and they do need a very special extraction technology to extract and put it into a capsule. So this bioeffective A, it is a biologically effective nutritional product, researched as an antioxidant, antimicrobial, gastrointestinal healing, and detoxification substance. And this is the part that medical doctors would have a problem with. How can one product do so many things? All right? That is because the system for evaluating Western medication is different from the system from evaluating natural therapies and complexes. Right? You cannot have a competition and judge fishes by its ability to climb a tree. Right? Okay, the Western medication says, okay, all of you fishes, you come. I have a competition for you against Western medication. But all the fishes, you have to climb a tree because it's a different system of evaluation. But it doesn't mean that these plant medicines are in any way more inferior. Let me demonstrate to you. The clinical studies done are in the areas, I'm just going to show you the gastrointestinal part here, which is the basis of this afternoon's lecture, but the applications are actually quite numerous. So let's look at gastritis, stomach ulcers, and acid reflux, as well as H. pylori. When bioeffective A was given to patients with atrophic gastritis is a stage which is stomach pre-cancer. So the patients that they gathered weren't those healthy patients or with little bit of gastric problems or little bit of acid reflux problems. They were patients who nobody wants to treat anymore, stomach pre-cancer. And then they separated these patients into two groups. One group to receive bioeffective A, Nuvapine A, the other group which is a control. So what happened after? Just to mention, half of the group who were treated had also H. pylori. So the results showed that after treatment with Nuvapine A, the stomach lining condition actually improved by 92%. GERD symptoms improved by 92%. Reduced pain, reduced heartburn, reduced gas, reduced discomfort. Improved stomach function, normalization of stomach function in about 60%, eradication of H. pylori in about 60%, and reversal of precancerous lesions. That means patients who went from pre-cancer to non-pre-cancer in about 50% of patients. So what it was doing essentially was to bring this injured area here, healing the areas inside, the stomach lining. And not just that, to restore functionality of the stomach lining. Remember that we have to have acid in our stomach in a normal way, so that acid don't escape, so that food can be digested. So this is what it does, normalization, healing of the stomach. It's also done, studies were also done in gastrointestinal disorders in children, whereby children who had frequent chronic gastrointestinal problems actually improved their condition through these different mechanisms. As a long-term therapy, I would actually recommend that patients who are on acid-blocking drugs or constantly taking a gulp of antacids or even your H2 antagonist, consider an alternative way of healing. You are taking medicines, gastric medications, to heal your symptoms, to address your symptoms. Please take care of the root, because this is very important for how you'll be living your days ahead. Have a long-term healing plan. Reduce reliance on medications. Support recovery with lifestyle modifications, and I'll go into that a little bit more. These are the doses that we use. It's very precise because it is actually clinical tested doses. These are the doses that has been shown to have the results that we want. So please look at it as a phytomedicine. Doses for different kinds of conditions. Just different kinds of tips for those of you with gastritis, GERD issues. Avoid eating too late. Leave at least 3 hours before bedtime. And avoid those trigger foods that worsen your condition. Spicy foods, tomatoes, peppermint, alcohol, caffeine. Achieve an ideal weight as well. Because if you're carrying a big load over here, it's going to be actually pressing the food upwards and worsening reflux. How to reduce gas, eat slowly, avoid carbonated drinks, don't smoke, check your dentures. These are some natural digestive aids. Ginger belongs to a food group called carminatives, which the cloves are also one of the foods. So are coriander. Coriander, cloves, and ginger are very good things to actually calm your tummy and settle it. Water, drink it appropriately. During meal times, limit your water intake because you want your enzymes to be actually digesting your food. And after about 30 minutes after a meal, avoid water, but rehydrate the rest of the day. Lemon, apple cider vinegar, these are actually very good. We use these ingredients to actually marinate our meats. It is the same when we take it. There's a lot of talk on the internet where you drink a lot of lemon, it will alkalize your body. Well, guess what pH is? Lemon. It's acidic. All right? But what it does is that it actually helps digestion, especially of meat. Take more fermented veggies, fermented drinks like lassi, and eat when you are relaxed. Don't eat when you are stressed. Because when you eat when you are stressed, your body's not going to be thinking about digestion. All right? So eat when you are relaxed. Now these are all the different clinical applications of Nuvapine A, not least in healing the gastrointestinal system. I would like to emphasize here a point. I think it's a very important point for me to share with Singapore, seeing the course of recent events. Nuvapine A is actually a very powerful antiviral, antibacterial. And just to give you an extra option in your treatment, These are the different kinds of viral infections we can use this product for. I'd like to share with you a case study of a 50-year-old man who was experiencing sores. He thought that he pricked his mouth with a fork, after which different kinds of sores, ulcers started to form. So he was in great pain. He could not eat. What this condition is actually a viral infection, herpes simplex. And up to 80% of our population actually carries this virus. It's in our body, but when there's stress or there's an external factor, it's actually triggered. So this man was in great distress. The treatment was this: Novopain A 320 milligram, 2 capsules 3 times a day, with application of the Novopain A contents as well. So what happened was that we actually used the contents of these capsules, we pricked it, and we applied it. It's a fantastic healing agent, right? Look what happened here. The sores, the white parts, are actually the painful parts. But over time, it began to heal. In 12 days' time, this man was quite healthy again, once again. I'd like to demonstrate to you, this is exactly what Novopain A is doing in your stomach, in your body. We can't see it, but I've taken a very prime example of a viral infection or a bacterial infection and sores, ulcers in the stomach, and how it can heal. Right. Just a very quick token to Singapore, who, yes, like Malaysia, we also have dengue season. You can use this as the natural alternative for dengue, and these are the doses. Also for Zika, and we have got also studies for Novopain A in pregnant women as well. Now this product has a very long history. It has been used since World War II, whereby in the city of Leningrad, which is actually modern-day St. Petersburg, the whole city was under siege by German soldiers. And what happened was that they had this pine extract, bioeffective A, which is your Novopain A now. And it was in the national formulary. The government used it to treat people, to treat soldiers with wounds, and it was also given as a daily ration to the population. It was in the form of drops. So every day, because food was so scarce, the city was surrounded, everyone had a ration of 125 grams of bread and 1 glass of water infused with bioeffective A. This city survived for 900 days because of this product. And we had the privilege of actually seeing this piece of bread, which is from World War II. It's the exact bread that was fed to the citizens of Leningrad. It's not moldy. It's still very much edible. In fact, there were only 3 left in the world. This one we saw in Melbourne. But the one that, the other 2, now there are only 2 left in the world, because one was accidentally eaten. Because it was edible. All right? So I've come to the end of my presentation, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to introduce Novopain A to Singapore. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Swanee. That was very informative. We will skip the Q&A. If you have questions later, you may approach Ms. Swanee and ask her personally the question.